This week on Illegal Aliens, Maria fakes it but confesses, Isabel burns her mouth on pizza just like the rest of us, and Max sneaks into the girls' locker room. Get ready for some astronomy nitpicks, because we're looking at sexual healing, episode 16 of season 1 of Roswell. I'm Chris.
And I'm Claire, and this is Illegal Aliens, a Roswell podcast. Sexual healing first aired on March 1st, 2000.
It was written by Jan Oxenberg, her only Roswell episode. Before this, she'd written for some very short-lived shows like Relativity, and she went on to write for Once and Again, Cold Case, Parenthood, and Pretty Little Liars.
Sexual Healing was directed by David Semel, who we saw in the director's chair for Monsters and Missing, but this is his last outing directing for the show. Let's start the recap.
In the crash down, Liz daydreams about Max and spills strawberries when Maria startles her. Max shows up and follows her into the back room. They assure each other they're still friends, then start to kiss passionately. Liz has a flash of something flying through space and tries to explain it to Maria when she returns to the dining room.
In chemistry class, Liz drops her pencil and Max returns it to her, which is enough to earn them another flash and detention. Maria and Michael talk about this news and decide to experiment for themselves. Maria talks of seeing stars, and Michael reports a young red-sniggered Maria.
Max and Liz are caught in the eraser room, and their mothers are summoned to speak with the principal, who has to explain the eraser room and the creative uses to which it's put. Liz tries to explain to her mom, but has to admit that she already got detention earlier in the day and can't come straight home.
Alex then earnestly volunteers for kissing experiments with Isabel, and she declines, but she does offer him consolation pizza.
In detention, Liz recognizes a similarity between an astronomy poster and her flashes, and starts asking the teacher questions. The astronomer identifies the whirlwind galaxy, and when she asks about a red star, suggests there could be a red giant star Earth telescopes can't pick out. When the teacher leaves, Liz tells Max she thinks she saw the crash.
At home again, Liz listens to her mother as she tries to lecture, torn between wanting to keep Liz her little girl and encouraging Liz to talk to her about anything. Max tells Michael and Isabel about Liz's flash, and Isabel is doubtful, but Michael is sure it's real, and Max tends to agree because he knows he sees things from Liz.
As Michael and Maria kiss in another quiet corner, Maria confesses that she invented the flashes to make Michael happy. As Michael starts to walk off, Maria suggests that Michael is too closed off for her to connect with him. Irritated, Michael says he invented the red sneakers too, and storms off.
Maria frets to Liz about being too honest with Michael, but stops when she spots the evidence of Liz and Max's romance, and offers makeup to cover the signs. On the way to the mirror, Liz is distracted by Max, who was sneaking into the girls' locker room to see if his flash of Liz's daydream was based on some reality. Liz is mortified, and Max tries to reassure her, saying he felt how she felt in her imagination. The gym teacher comes looking for Liz, who hides with Max. Max notices the hickey on Liz's neck, which is glowing now that he's close, and Max removes it completely with his powers.
Liz arrives at Michael's place for a quiet night with Max and bumps into Michael and Isabel as they're leaving. Max and Liz kiss and make out, looking for answers, but stop when Maria shows up, looking for Michael. Maria insists on driving Liz back home and tries her hand at lecturing, but Liz isn't listening. She knows that what she's doing with Max is right.
Liz slips back into her bedroom, but finds Mum waiting there. Mum is concerned and says Liz looks like she has a fever. Annoyed, Liz flees to the bathroom. Later, as Liz sketches on the balcony, Max scales the balcony, also unable to sleep. He identifies the sketch of Liz's latest flash, the old radio tower, not far from the crash site. He suggests going with Michael, but Liz persuades him to go with her right then.
In the desert by the old radio tower, they have no idea how to proceed but to kiss again. Liz hears a beeping sound that's been there in her flashes. They track it to its source and dig. Quickly something sends up a beam of blue light. Max finds and picks up an ovoid stone with a symbol for the Whirlpool Galaxy inscribed on it. They fall asleep on a blanket together out in the desert.
In the morning, family notice their absence. Isabel goes to Alex, asking to take him up on his offer of a kissing experiment. It yields nothing relevant, and Isabel walks away, hiding a smile from Alex.
In the desert, Liz and Max are woken by a strange man, familiar to us from the shape-shifting at the end of last episode. He tells them to go home and they leave. Maria goes to Michael looking for comfort and tells him that her failure to flash wasn't his fault, it was hers. When she's uncertain, she fakes it with everyone, and Michael's the first person she's confessed it to. Michael says that it was his fault, because he wasn't making up the red sneakers, and he proves it with details from before he met Maria. They reconcile, and Maria says she wanted to feel close to Michael, more than flashes.
As they approach the crashdown, Max and Liz wonder if the flashes were more about their feelings, or about finding the mysterious orb. Holding hands, they go to face the music with their parents.
Right.
That's our episode.
Quite an episode.
I'd forgotten how much Max and Liz there was.
Yeah. Which I think I noticed something that I'm not sure if I'd picked up before, but that in the very beginning with Liz and Max in the back room, she is teasing him shamelessly, walking around and making sure to brush as close to him as she possibly can.
Do you know, I watched this 3 times and I completely missed that. I was too preoccupied working out the symbolism of the strawberries, I think.
Right, yes. There are a number of different metaphors you could go to with that, I think.
I think so.
I've always been wondering about that question about exactly where the flashes did come from, because although they seem to be a part of Liz and Max's passion and their connection, they're not like anything which ever happens to them again during the whole run of the show.
Or to anyone else. This is an interesting one, because we know from Michael and Maria, who are, for the purposes of this episode rather bizarrely, our normal couple, that flashes emotively as a thing still exist.
Right.
And also that you don't need to be magnetically drawn to each other all through the day, every day, to evoke them.
Right.
So, whatever is happening with Max and Liz, I think is kind of a thing off on its own.
Yeah, it is. I do wonder how much of it we can draw back to Max saving Liz's life all the way in the pilot.
Possibly. Like, I find it quite odd, too, that when he's talking to Liz, when he's being reassuring, he says, no, it's okay, I felt what you felt. But Liz, of all people, shouldn't need that explained to her, because it was Liz in the pilot, or maybe the episode after, where she said, I felt everything you felt, when she talks of being healed.
Yes, and possibly that is exactly what she's embarrassed about, of Max.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Seeing her feelings more than feeling her feelings more than seeing her fantasy.
No, that's well caught, yeah. That would make more sense to me, actually.
Right. And I do think it's interesting that there are, even though Michael and Marie are trying to, in various ways, to put it in terms of the person who is sending the flashes having to be open in a certain way, I do think it's interesting that we have 4 people who are receiving flashes, assuming that Isabel does actually get something from Alex.
Yes.
And that Liz is the only one who is born human.
Yes. Oh, that is interesting. And she's the only one, too, who is being overwhelmed by them, as it were.
Right, yes.
But also the only one to see anything remotely relevant to the alien puzzle.
Yeah.
You know, nobody else is doing detection by kissing, because that's not a method that's working for anyone but Max and Liz, and it's Liz that's getting the clues.
Yes, the clues are coming to her without...
Yes, yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Of intent on her part.
But then they don't seem to be reliant on kissing either, because Max only sort of grazes her hand there in the chemistry room.
Yes. So it could be that it has to do with the intensity of the emotion more than the intensity of the physicality.
Yeah, that would make sense to me.
So I did actually go through and try to note down as much as I could about all of the flashes.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yes. So we have 5 sequences, really. We have the sequence in the kitchen where Liz hears the beeping, sees what I'll call just kind of the star screensaver effect.
It is, though, yeah?
and kind of a glowing ball surrounded by little dark rocks, and then we zoom in on the glowing ball, and that turns out to be a cloud of bright stars.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. In the classroom, we have zooming into the galaxy, we have stars against this very pretty multicolored nebula, and we zoom in on what appears to be a black hole of some kind. It's certainly a mostly spherical black lump against the background of stars. And this is the only bit which is apparently what Liz is seeing that does not have the beeping with it.
Yes.
So in the eraser room, we get something that Max is presumably seeing, which is little Liz playing dress up.
With the weirdest musical cue in the whole episode.
Yeah.
It sounds like it belongs in a Hitchcock film, but I don't know why it's there.
Yeah.
It does, though. It wouldn't be out of place in Psycho. And yet.
Yeah. And from Liz's side, we again see the screensaver effect. We have the brown planet, possibly Jupiter, going past. Zooming in on Earth, the clouds and mountains getting closer.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth one is in the locker room when Max heals the Hickey. And that one has the desert landscape, the vehicle with most of U.S. Army written on it, and the soldiers who are apparently chasing something, and the beeping again. And in Michael's apartment, we have again the desert landscape, the soldiers, the transmission tower. We have something which looks like the pod chamber, as we'll see it later.
Yes.
And we have a view up from a hole with dirt being thrown down on whatever it is to bury it. And I think that is possibly the most interesting image out of all of the flashes, because a lot of them do seem as if they're point of view visuals from somebody other than Max or Liz.
Well, they have to be, I think, yeah.
Yes. And if the point of view is of the thing that's buried, then I'm wondering if it's something that Max is getting on a psychic basis from the orb itself.
Right. So the cosmic egg timer also does radio signals.
Yes. Yes.
That makes sense, because it also then beams that thing up as they expose it to light, doesn't it? Like, he sends something.
Yes, and later we will also see it projecting something in a different way.
Yeah, it's very odd, that thing.
It is, yes.
To the point that I had forgotten its role in the first season, so...
But I do kind of find it's certainly evocative the way it's Liz who can pick this up, but only when she's both physically and emotionally close to Max.
Yes, it's almost as if his healing her has sprung up this connective tissue between them that is, I don't know, theirs particularly? Like, it's not something she can tap into on her own. Yes, she's not having prophetic dreams about the cosmic egg timer, it's just when she's with Max.
Yeah, and it does seem a little bit like what we've seen of, and we'll see further on, of Isabel's dreamwalking.
Yes.
In that she kind of is hyper-conscious when she's doing that, but is always tapping into something which is deeply subconscious in somebody else.
Yes, which is interesting, because I think if it were just an ordinary flash, the beeping noise would surely pull her out of it, in the way that, an outside interruption wakes you up from a dream.
Right.
It's deeply intrusive, the beeping, but it doesn't seem to be intrusive to Liz.
Right. Yes, and I do love how the beeping turns out to be the critical clue at the very end.
Yes. That they finally have a way of being deductive that is not kissing in corners, yeah.
Yes. But yeah, I kind of like the sense that Max gets these impressions from the orb, but he can't access them because they're in some deep part of his brain that he can't see consciously, but that Liz can connect to it when they're close.
Yes, I mean, I think that's why I like Maria's theory about its vulnerability that exposes the flashes so much.
Right.
because you're tapping into the side of the other person that not even you necessarily see. Certainly the world doesn't.
Right.
But this
Yes.
is a thing, if you are close enough, you are able to bear witness to.
Yes. Yes. Which does make me wonder exactly what it is that Isabel saw that makes her smile as she's going
I
down
know,
the
I was
walk
going
there.
to say, if it's not been written already, somebody, who's enjoying this podcast, please write it up for me. I will be very happy.
Yes.
I would like an
Yes.
answer to that. Because yeah, she must see something. The way she delivers that, nothing that was relevant.
Yes. Yes. Which does remind me, at least, very much of what she saw when she went dreamwalking him back in the heat wave.
Yes. Well, yeah, Alex, bless his wee cotton socks, is just such an open book. there's,
Right.
there's no way that he's closed off enough that she's not getting something of a flash there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, but getting back to Max and Liz, I do
Yeah.
kind of like how that connection with them kind of, I guess, reflects back on the theme I saw all the way back in the pilot, how they are stronger for having come together, for having saved each other's lives back then.
Yes.
That because of everything he shared with Liz, Max has found this thing that he would never have known about if it wasn't for her.
I think neither of them would.
Yeah.
Um, but it's interesting in this episode that we don't invert it, but we develop this theory that it's especially heightened, that it's almost a sickness.
Right.
Liz has that line about, do you think it will make me ill? And her mother thinks she's burning up. It's
Right.
almost like a fever, And we all but textually
Yeah.
make it one,
Right. Yes.
which
And
is,
given everything else that's connected with it, it almost evokes kind of animals going into
it,
mating heat and that kind of thing.
that too. But also shades of Michael's sickness. Like there's a real sense that they're somehow out of
Right.
balance.
Yes.
Not, with each other, but sort of cosmically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing about it is normal. Even Maria is getting, this isn't normal.
Right.
And she's generally protective of Liz anyway, I think. But
Yes. Yes.
yeah, we've never had her quite this mother henish before.
Yes. And then I kind of really like the whole bit back and forth with Michael and Maria, where Maria wants so much this sign of being close to Michael and wants to prove herself useful to him that she makes things up and then feels guilty enough that she blurts it out at the worst possible moment.
But I love that about her too. There's a conversation in one of the Caslett Chronicles by Elizabeth Jane Howard, where one of the characters, Polly, talks about her parents, and her mother is dying of cancer. And her father knows it, and her mother knows it, but they won't talk about it to each other. They're each pretending it's not happening. And Polly says of them,
Right.
I wish they would talk to each other. People who love each other that much should talk. And that's what we see
Right.
Michael and Maria doing.
Yes.
And in some ways, I think as we rewatch this, it's becoming one of my favourite relationships on the show. The way they
Yes.
just have this honesty that sometimes is disastrous,
Right.
but it's also very quietly grounded in a need to understand each other.
Yes. And I'm not sure if I realized this before, but when he's hurt by Maria telling him a fantasy, Michael's reaction is to take back something that was real.
Yes. Yeah, and it's, oh goodness, so different to last episode where he was craving that kind of reality. He didn't
Yes.
want the fantasy
Yes.
that seemed to be the Evanses' life, but he did want normalcy, reality as he perceived it. And Maria
Right.
tries to give him that, and no, I'd sort of rather the fantasy now.
Right.
But I also like, too, that in a nice kind of counterpoint, we had him going to her last time,
Right.
turning up at the doorstep. I need just to be.
Yeah.
And it was her doing that this time that he was able to reciprocate.
Yeah.
Which, at the beginning of season 1, I don't think I would have foreseen Michael doing, at least not the first time I watched it.
Right.
He said he can sit quietly and just give Maria a hug. Not really, though, right?
Well, yeah. And we have an awful lot more of the parents than usual, but I'm not really sure how much there is to say about them. They don't.
No. I do very much like Liz's mother in this.
Oh, yes.
And the way she tries to walk that line. But aside from acknowledging that I like it, I don't know how much there is to go into.
Right. Well, I think that even though she has these fears for Liz, which are kind of about the very normal and human part of growing up. And even though she doesn't know everything that Liz is getting into with the alien danger, I think that it kind of reflects the fears that she would have about that if she knew.
Yes, but I think she'd have them anyway, even were Max human. I mean, I think if we came into the
Right.
show a bit earlier and Liz starting her relationship with Kyle,
Right.
this version of her mother would also work there.
Yes. Yeah, that is true.
And there's something interesting too, I think, happening in the episode, in that we seem to be talking a lot about talking. Liz's mother wants to talk to her, and Maria needs to talk to Michael, and Isabel needs answers to all of it. All the aliens need answers.
Right.
But Liz and Max, who haven't talked since, what was it, Blind Date? Don't
Pretty
talk
much,
because
yeah.
they're too preoccupied in being close to each other and getting answers to this thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Talking is kind of the last thing on anyone's mind.
Yes. Yes. And I think that they do actually have a nice little conversation right at the very
They
end
do. That's a lovely
after
quiet moment.
everything's resolved. Yes. And the teasing about her past with Kyle.
Yes. And it's, after all that heightened emotion of the episode, just a very human, down to earth moment.
Yes.
They're laughing and holding hands, so there are no flashes.
Yes. Yes, and they walk into very deliberate, very definitely holding hands to so that their parents can see.
Yes, this is a relationship we're now acknowledging.
Yep.
I suppose
Yep.
it would be odd if they didn't after all of that.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, you had.
Astronomy nitpicks.
Yes.
Okay, so first off, the Whirlpool Galaxy is a thing. It is reasonably close in our local group. And I have to say, I'm not really sure how well Liz could identify that versus any other spiral galaxy, including our own, which, of course, we have never seen from outside, so we are only guessing as to exactly what it looks like. But
Well, I suppose you could assume she intuits it in a sort of emotive
right.
way more than an intellectual one. Looking
Yeah.
at it feels the same as the flashes or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to me as if they are trying to give the impression that the aliens come not just from another star system and another planet, but another galaxy.
Yeah.
And that is something which is a bit of a pet peeve of mine in science fiction, that kind of space within a galaxy is already big enough that it seems to me there is no real reason to invoke other galaxies unless kind of you've already been playing in one galaxy for long enough that it starts to feel cramped and you actually need the space for a bigger story than that.
I hadn't thought about that, but you do make a good point.
Yes.
There's an awful lot
And
of sky out there.
yes, yes, and just kind of casually hopping off to other galaxies kind of seems to minimize the distances involved rather than
Yeah.
emphasize them. And the bit about the red giant is kind of one of those things where I can see the point that they were getting at, but it's so poorly explained.
Yes.
In that he says, well, the light from a red giant is so dim. And no, red giants are, on the whole, one of the brighter stars. They are giants. They're putting a lot of light out
That's what
there.
I remember from very basic science. But
Yes.
it doesn't last long or something, does it?
No, it doesn't. A red giant is usually, as I think Liz points out, fairly close to the end of its lifespan and will burn out quickly. Whereas on the other hand, the red dwarfs are very dim, very common, and will last just about forever.
Ah. Perhaps they wanted it to be one of those?
Possibly. The other thing is that when we're looking at other galaxies, even ones that are fairly close, it is very hard to pick out particular stars just because there are so many of them that are so close together.
Yeah.
So we probably could not see a red giant in the Whirlpool Galaxy, or at least we couldn't have in 1999, 2000, whenever. not because it was dim, but just because it wasn't as outstandingly bright enough to stand out from the crowd.
Well, there's very low light pollution in Roswell, and Liz has a double plus good, high quality telescope.
Yeah.
Or maybe she's picked up some sort of subtle alien power after being
Right.
healed, in which she can now spot long distance stars. I don't know.
Right.
That seems unlikely.
No, but like, I mean, it does kind of make sense in that she's not really talking about her own telescope, but she's contrasting what she's seen in the flashes versus the poster on the wall.
Yes.
But yeah, so not really that much to nitpick, but I did want to
Fair enough.
things.
I think I have another timeline question for you,
Okay.
if that's allowable.
That is certainly allowable.
How late in the evening is it supposed to be when Maria drives Liz home? Because Michael gets home in time for the hockey game, which I'm assuming isn't on at 11 o'clock at night, but Liz has to climb
Right.
through a window to get back into her house, so it's after the crash down has shut, presumably?
Either that or she was trying to avoid parents and then didn't expect mom to be sitting right in her room waiting for her.
In which case, why not just come around the back way to the... Like, there have to be ways of doing that are less complicated. I will go with that, though. She's trying to avoid her parents, so climbs in the window, and it's not a late night. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think she's just grown used to using the balcony and the window by this point. It's kind of her own little private door.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
And I did notice one thing actually about the geography and the reference to the area around the crash site and the radio tower. Yes, and according to the text on the screen, just kind of at the beginning when we see kind of that little flash of the tower before we go to Max and Liz.
That's right. With the thing that looks to me like a chipmunk aeroplane.
Yes.
But clearly
so
isn't.
They mentioned that is in Lincoln County, which is actually the one next over to the west from Roswell, which is in Chavez County. But on the other hand, it is very thinly populated. Lincoln County as a whole has a population of 20,000, and Roswell, the town, has a population of 40,000.
Okay.
So that is why the crash became associated with Roswell and not Lincoln County, I guess.
Presumably.
And yeah, I'm not quite sure about the actual specifics of the Roswell crash itself, but that is consistently kind of the direction from town that they go and put all of the crash site stuff in the show.
Oh, good. Okay, so I could work that into my mental map.
And so on. Yes.
I like knowing where they all are in time and space. As listeners by now have no doubt worked out.
Yep. And on the other side of town from Bitter Lake.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm not quite sure what to make of our brief cameo from the guy who is probably Nasedo at the end.
Yeah, I'm not either. I'm not sure. I suppose he's there because he anticipates the beeping whatever it is going off and sending up its flare.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does, but also if he's the shapeshifter, we don't know much about them at this point, so that's fair play.
Yeah, quite possibly I'm wondering if maybe he got some of those flashes directly because he doesn't have a human side to his brain like Max does.
Oh, that's possible.
Was wandering a little further afield in his machinations and took some time to get to the area to check under the radio tower where he buried it in the first place.
At what point in the rewatches, I wondered if he was somehow sending the memories. I don't know how he'd be doing it, but if he's more alien than not, a light spot of telepathy is probably all things go, yeah?
Yeah, especially since they do seem to have psychic aspects to their powers in a lot of ways, and so telepathy would fit in to a certain extent. And I was actually wondering if that was it up until I realized that the shot of burying the something was from the POV of what was buried and not from the point of view of the person burying it.
Yes. Or, I mean, it's certainly shot that way. I suppose you could make an argument for it being from the point of view of the burier looking down, but I don't think that's it. Because we're
No,
paying very
no.
specific attention to covering whatever it is up.
Yes, yes, and you can kind of see both the dirt that is falling and the sky that is beyond it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but certainly he seems to be satisfied with the fact that Max and Liz have it at this point. He could certainly have taken it while they were sleeping and chose not to.
Yes, I mean, he's right there, isn't he? Disconcertingly so.
Yes,
They wake up and there he is, sort of looming. But that's him for you.
yes, yes. I did also wonder if it was supposed to have any possibility of it just being coincidence that he had based that face on a particular alien man who just happened to be the one who was wandering by and found them.
That's a rather good idea. Although, can alien... Well, we don't know, do we? I was going to say, can shapeshifters switch into people that are still alive, but we have no idea.
There's certainly an indication that that's so from Hubble's story.
Yes.
Because
that's right, because they chase the man that they think.
And finds the actual human and kills him.
And kills him, yeah.
Right. No, it's in Buffy that we have something that can assume the appearances of only the people who are dead.
Good, yeah, very much so.
Right. Yeah, I've been watching, or I've been listening to Lonnie's Still Pretty.
So have I, and
yes.
I've got to say much less cause to say good God, but they're still so very young in this episode.
Yep. Okay. So I think we can go on to favorite moments at this point.
I think we can.
And I would have to say it's Alex and Isabel at the end there.
Oh, that's lovely, yeah. I think mine is actually Michael's description of the red sneakers. The description he gives of that flash.
Yes.
It's almost more effective for me, I think, for not being visible on screen.
Right.
But I really like that.
Yeah, it's a nice moment, and I really liked Maria's reaction to it and how it ties back to her missing father figure.
Yes. Yeah, I love her acting all through this episode, actually. She just feels very... I don't know. I'm very sympathetic to her throughout.
Right. Okay.
And that...
Episode MVP.
Yeah. Who do you think?
I'm actually really not sure here.
Okay, you were supposed to be, because neither am I. It's an odd one, because I feel like we spend a lot of time in flashes and or in Max and Liz snogging. So...
Right.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
It just means people have a bit less to do.
Yeah, I think I am drawn towards Shiri Appleby again.
She is very good.
She is. She does have quite a bit to pick up and carry.
Yes, and she does what she has to do very well. So that would be not at all unreasonable.
Yeah.
Well,
you kind of have to give shout-outs to Jason and Brendan and Mahendra at least.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of performances in this that could be called out, I think.
Right.
It's all very good work.
Yeah, we're definitely kind of finding our groove as we barrel down into the end of season 1.
We are. We've now got a pretty solid handle on who these people are and their world, and we're adding to it nicely.
Yes, and we're going to take their world apart very shortly.
We are at that.
And I think I will rate it with 5 strawberries.
5 strawberries is good. I think I will rate it with 5 ovoid rocks.
Okay. If you agree or disagree with us, you can get in touch via Twitter at @alienscast or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/alienscast or visit our blog at alienscast.com.
If you enjoyed this episode, please link to us on your blog, on Twitter, Facebook, or wherever else you are on the internet. You can leave us a review over on iTunes and help other Roswellians find us. Our theme music is Epic Trailer Intro by Honey Lemon.
Or you can get in touch by email at illegalalienscast.com and suggest anything you'd like us to discuss on the podcast, send in audio files that we can play.
All of that too. We love hearing from you. And this podcast is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. Find out more by searching for Creative Commons.
I'm Chris Kelworth.
And I'm Claire, and this is Illegal Aliens, a Roswell podcast. Join us on Monday, August 21st, 2017 for a discussion of the 17th episode of Season 1, Crazy.
In which Topolsky finally comes back to town, a new girl makes friends with Isabel, and I ask some questions about dreamwalking and trust.
Well, at least Topolsky finally got that email.